Next, we have an exclusive and live interview. This is really breaking news. Incredibly happy to have him. We have the Qatari government spokesperson, Dr. Majed, on the line. Doctor, do we have you?
Yes. Hello, Morgan.
Well, thank you so much for dialing in. We really appreciate it. You are the very first guest, Dr. Majed, on the Morgan Ortagus Show, which is a foreign policy and national security show in the United States, which airs live every Sunday. Dr. Majed, one of the things that we have been talking about is the fact that we still have at least 8 Americans that are held hostage. And of course, we were able to get many hostages back in the negotiations that your government oversaw just a few weeks ago. They've been ongoing since October 7th. Can you give our listeners sort of insight behind the scenes of the Qatari government's role in negotiating between America, Israel, and Hamas on getting these hostages back?
Well, first of all, Morgan, thank you very much for having me, and I feel very honored to be your first guest on this program, which I think all of us will be listening to every week to get the latest on all of these issues, and I commend you on all the work you've been doing, and welcome you here to Doha. You did a great job today moderating with Senator Graham, and we're very happy to have you here in Doha. Regarding your question, as you rightly mentioned, we've been working on mediation over this issue since in 2006. We were asked by the then Bush administration to play a part in opening a channel of communication with Hamas. This was, of course, post-Hamas taking over Gaza, and there was a need to open a channel of communication with them to maintain peace and to find ways to mediate and avert war in the region. And we've been doing that countless times. We averted so many wars, and we worked through some of these wars in 2008 and 2014. And even the last negotiation and last mediation we held was on the 28th of September of this year between both sides, where we reached an agreement to reopen the areas crossing and expand fishing rights for the Palestinians. And post the terrible attacks of 7th of October, we immediately opened the channels of communication with both sides through the Israeli government, of course, and the political office of Hamas here in Doha, to make sure, first and foremost, to get the hostages home, especially the civilians, as soon as possible, stop the escalation on the ground, make sure that we have open humanitarian routes, and to make sure that this does not become a regional conflict, which all of us can't handle the ramifications from. Our negotiation team started working immediately. An operations room was established here in Doha, and the operation room is working 24/7. I can tell you that our negotiators haven't had a day off, an hour off, since this crisis has begun, and we work directly with both sides to make sure that all information is relayed in real time. As soon as we had the first releases, the 2 American ladies and the 2 Israeli elderly ladies, and then the momentum started for the agreement that took place, and the agreement was, as you all know, it lasted for 7 days. Within these 7 days, we were able to get a lot of the hostages out and back with their families. And I can tell you that all the work that's been put into this, all the sweat and tears into the mediation process, all of it was worth it when you see a child like Abigail back with her family, back in safety.
Yes.
That is the only thing that makes it worth it. And what we are working towards now, and we are continuing relentlessly to do, is to make sure that all the hostages are back with their families as soon as possible, out of harm's way, and that we are able to negotiate a peace out of this that would guarantee the security of Israelis and Palestinians and the region as a whole.
Thank you, Dr. Majed, for explaining that. I think one thing that all Americans can agree on is you just see no one wants the loss of innocent life on either side. And I can tell you that the pictures of the children, the babies, the elderly women who survived the Holocaust, the pictures of them being used as hostages, being used as human shields, were just so hard for all of us as Americans to process. But then the pictures of being able to see them return home, I think, gave everybody hope. And Dr. Majed, there was a lot of debate in the United States about if there should be a ceasefire in order to allow the hostages to come home or not. That was intensely debated in the United States. I was firmly on the side of we have to get our people home if we can. And I know that work continues. Our audience, may not know it yet because this is a brand new show, Dr. Majed, but I was also in Doha many times with Secretary Mike Pompeo in the Trump administration. President Trump had the goal of wanting to end America's longest war. And that involved negotiating with the Taliban. And these are hard negotiations. I tell people all the time, the easiest thing in diplomacy is to fly around the world and meet with your friends, right? That's an easy thing to do. That's the easy work of a diplomat. The hard thing is whenever you have to negotiate with people whenever they, quite frankly, like the Taliban had killed American service members, or like Hamas, had killed both Israelis and Americans. That's the hard work to do. Can you give our audience a little bit of insight what it was like during the Trump administration when we were here negotiating through the Qataris with the Taliban to try and get an agreement with them?
Well, Morgan, as you know, we've been working on mediations for 25 years now. We've mediated in Lebanon between Hezbollah and the other factions. We've mediated between Iran and the United States, between Taliban and the United States, in Africa between Eritrea and Djibouti. We've done all of these mediations, countless of them under the same premise, which is the paramount goal of the mediation is to establish a lasting peace. And in order to do that, as you rightly mentioned, Morgan, and I applaud what you just said, it's having the difficult discussions with the difficult partners. It's not having the easy discussions with the easy partners. As you said, it would make my life easier and everybody at the Qatari Foreign Ministry if we said, you know what, let's stop doing these mediations, let's not work towards that, and let's do the easy work of just going around and telling people how we agree about everything. But the problem is that would mean that nobody else will play that role. When we were mediating between the Taliban and the United States, we came under a lot of heat for hosting the Taliban office here in Doha, which a lot of people did not know was asked directly by the administration at the time for us to establish this office in Doha to maintain the negotiations. And that was the same time that the political office was established of Hamas here in Doha to also do the same mediations. And these mediations between the Taliban and the United States were very difficult from day one, but we worked tirelessly until we got the agreement done and we got American forces back home. And the work continues in Afghanistan today as we are talking to the Taliban about their infringements on human rights and are applying pressure to them through the international community and are working for some kind of engagement on a humanitarian level in Afghanistan. We never leave these kinds of contexts. We work within the context. We stay the course. We don't, we're not content when it's just signing an agreement. It's implementing the agreement and making sure there is a lasting peace is the difficult part. Of course, we don't agree with Hamas. Of course, we don't agree with the Taliban. But we have to work together to make sure that hostages are back home with their families. There is a lasting peace. Because you were talking about, the elderly people on both sides. I can tell you, very quickly of two ladies who broke my heart personally, and I know that everybody in Qatar and around the world felt the same way. An elderly lady being killed in the kibbutz in Israel without any mercy. And just a couple of days ago, a 90-year-old woman in Gaza left her home to look for water and food because she couldn't afford to stay home anymore. She was shot in the head as she came out of her home. These pictures are the pictures that are the drivers behind what we do. We are doing this work. We know we will take a lot of heat because of it, but as long as it saves lives, we will stay the course.
And Dr. Majed, like I said, nobody wants to see the innocent loss of life on either side ever. You don't want to see that. And listen, we are partners and friends, the United States and Qatar. We don't agree on everything. We disagree on some things. We firmly think that Hamas is responsible for every death because of the terrorist acts that they committed on October 7th. But for our audience, I want them to know as well, just a very quick story. During August 2021 and our disastrous, really poorly planned withdrawal from Afghanistan, I had friends in Afghanistan who couldn't get out. And they had worked with the United States. They had worked with Canada. My friend was a Harvard-educated lawyer, and he and his family were sitting ducks for the Taliban. And it was actually not our government, not the American government. It was the Qatari government that got not only my friend and his immediate family, but his parents and his entire family out They are in Canada today, and my friend would be dead if it wasn't for your government getting them out. So listen, thank you for taking the time, Dr. Majed, to come on and explain why you are doing what you said is somewhat of a controversial role for you guys sometimes. But thank you for at least coming on to explain it to our audience. Dr. Majed, spokesperson for the government of Qatar.